Let's now return to the developing story in the Middle East. Over 900 Israeli people have died since Hamas attacked the country of Israel on Saturday. And as many as 150 hostages have been taken by Hamas, including children, the elderly and foreigners. In the reprisal attacks, it's understood at least 700 Palestinians have died. Israel has announced a total blockade of Gaza, including cutting off food, water and electricity to civilians. UNICEF, one of the organizations, saying that a humanitarian corridor must be opened up so civilians, including many children, can leave the Gaza Strip. Hamas is threatening to kill a hostage every time an Israeli attack is launched without warning. Where will this end? Let's get the position of Israel's ambassador to South Africa, Eliav Belotsercovsky. Good evening, Ambassador. It is such a terrible time, and our condolences for the horrific loss of civilian life in Israel, horrific things that we are seeing. Is Israel considering a ground offensive?
Well, first of all, what happened was a truly barbarous attack on civilian population, and which civilian population was specifically targeted. The Hamas terrorist organization began its attack by sending barrages of missiles on Israel, again targeting Jerusalem, targeting Tel Aviv, targeting Ashdod, Ashkelon. Many other towns and villages of Israel were under missile attack. And in addition to this, there were armed bands of terrorists that penetrated Israeli territory through tunnels, by paragliders, on boats, entering through the checkpoints. It was a massive invasion. And the people of Israel, it was Sabbath, Saturday, it's a holiday in Israel. They didn't expect anything like that. And suddenly they were under occupation of very brutal force that left nobody and spared nobody. We saw today there were some journalists that entered one of the kibbutzim, the kibbutz Kfar Aza, one of them that were under Hamas, and they found 40 babies killed in their cradles. Some were decapitated. I mean, this is ISIS. This is awful. This is absolutely terrible, and this has to be condemned. There is no other way.
Are you going to go in on the ground? Is that decision still being made by Israel?
Well, there is no yet final decisions. We are still assessing what has happened. But Israel has to dismantle the Hamas terrorist organization. And I want to say again, this is not a fight between Israel and the Palestinians. We don't have a conflict with the Palestinians. We have a conflict with Hamas. Hamas is a terrorist organization and Islamic Jihad. They rule Gaza. This is a dictatorship. It's a completely autocratic regime. There is no, it's not a democracy. There are no parties in Hamas, in Gaza.
Yeah.
This is a pure dictatorship.
So bearing that in mind, that it's a dictatorship in Gaza, what are you going to do to try and make sure that the many children and civilians in Gaza don't get pulled into this? I know they're sometimes used as human shields, etc., but there are many children, there are many people in Gaza who want a safe humanitarian corridor, which has been called for by UNICEF, among others. Get these people out. Does Israel support the establishment of a humanitarian corridor to get civilians out of Gaza?
Well, initially, Israel has called to the civilians, to the civil population of Gaza, to leave Gaza. Now, we need to remember, if you look at the geography of the Gaza Strip, Gaza has a border with Egypt.
That's the close, though, isn't it?
Rafah border checkpoint. And the people can pass from Gaza to Egypt. Israel is not there. Israel does not control this checkpoint at all.
Yes, but isn't that border closed?
Well, I don't know. It depends on the Egyptian and the Palestinians. But if the Egyptian open...
Yeah, so you're saying the Egyptians need to make sure that border is open?
That is a way out, and it has always been. Yeah. I mean, Gaza was never under
but the
blockade.
Fact that UNICEF is saying there needs to be a humanitarian corridor. Clearly there's concerns about safe passage for civilians to get out of Gaza. Would you support a safe passage for innocent people to leave Gaza?
Well, it's a tactical question. Of course, we never, ever targeted civilian population. We are trying to prevent any civilian casualties. Again, our war is not a war with civilian population. It's not with Palestinians. It's only with the Hamas.
Yeah.
And we need to dismantle the Hamas terrorist infrastructure in order to prevent such atrocities against our people.
I hear
and
you. What do you mean by a tactical question?
No, I'm saying is that, of course, we will support any attempt to get the civilian people to leave, but where is it going to be, how is it going to be, etc. It has to be decided on the ground. But of course, the Israeli government will be open for any recommendations of this sort, because we really don't have a war with the civilian population.
I want to talk about the hostages. We spoke to our correspondent in Tel Aviv, Sarah Coates, in the last hour, and she said news coming in is that Israeli parents are being told to take their children's devices, cell phones, etc., and delete social media. They are hearing that there's going to be a barrage of videos of hostages pleading for their lives released on social media. Is this true? Do you have intelligence that this is exactly what Hamas is about to start doing?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised. And also today and yesterday, actually, there were really hundreds of video clips that were filmed by the Hamas themselves, murdering people, kidnapping people, exterminating entire families. I mean, this was something that they filmed themselves. It was not some fabricated by anybody. So of course, these images are very, very disturbing, and also the media in Israel do not use this media because of the impact on the population.
Hamas has said it's going to kill hostages if the Israeli Defense Force launches missile strikes without a warning. Now, Sarah was explaining it's called, I think, a door knock, that you drop a small item onto a building that you're about to hit so people know to get out. Does that process continue? Is Israel going to continue to do that to warn any potential civilians to get out of the area?
Israel will continue to warn any potential civilians to get out of the area, to leave the war zones. We need to understand that the Hamas, what they are doing is trying to build their infrastructure in the midst of civilian population. And this creates a very problematic difficulty for the Israeli Defense Forces to try to fight the Hamas. That's why we call for all the civilians to leave these areas. We do it in advance.
Yeah. Would Israel consider freeing any Palestinian prisoners in exchange for these Israeli hostages?
Well, I think I'm not in a position really to start negotiations on this issue. I think it's too early to say. I think it's going to be a very complicated issue, because we need to conduct these negotiations with the terrorist organization, and we will have to see how it goes.
I think those of us on the outside of this conflict see how intensely difficult it is to navigate any peace process, and how deeply passionate everyone feels about this, and how hurt everyone gets. So often for people like us, we look at international organizations to see a mediated approach, a sense of what is the fair and right thing to do. So the United Nations has condemned your total blockade of Gaza. They say it violates the Geneva Convention, which has clear rules about warfare and keeping civilians out of it. What is your response to the UN?
Well, first, again, we need to understand, you cannot blockade Gaza. Gaza has a border with Egypt.
Your Prime Minister himself has said this is a total blockade. That's the phrase
it's a total blockade, because...
And that's been condemned. So speak to that.
We stopped any sort of interaction. We need to understand that before this heinous attack, there were thousands of workers from Gaza that were leaving Gaza every morning, coming to Israel to work. Children were being sent to Israeli hospitals for treatment.
Yeah, and that's all stopped now.
And that's all stopped
So
now.
what is your specific response to the United Nations? It's saying that your Prime Minister saying that there's now a total blockade on Gaza is actually against international law.
We have to defend our people. This is not something we can...
He says it's collective punishment for civilians.
There is no collective punishment. Our war is not against civilians. Our war is against Hamas. And the Hamas has to pay the price. not the people. The Hamas has to pay the price for what they have done. It was an unprecedented attack. Again, it was ISIS. You cannot describe it in other ways. And the problem, I think, is the fact that we need to see more condemnation of this attack.
How do you feel about the South African government's position?
Well, the South African government issued a statement. I wouldn't like to refer to it, but I think that it's very, very important for all free-loving countries and democracies in particular to issue a condemnation of such an attack. It doesn't matter. There is no justification for people entering houses, destroying the whole families, attacking women, killing children in their cradles. No justification. You cannot explain it. There is no even attempt to explain it. This is absolutely shocking.
So what we hear from us on the sidelines is that the West Bank is occupied, that Israel continues to settle people where it shouldn't, against the agreed principles, and that there's been growing frustration about a lack of action to create a fair system. I agree with you. I don't think anything justifies the horrors that we've seen. But the pushback is that there are problems and there are atrocities committed, and it should not be happening like that. And in that context, where does it end? Because yes, Israel is a mighty army and can go in and can literally flatten Gaza. Where will that leave Israel? Where will it leave any potential for a peace process?
Yeah, well, we are not going to flatten Gaza nor any other area. It's not our aim. Our aim is to try to live in peace with our neighbors. And to remind you, in 2004, Israel completely withdrew from Gaza. There were settlements inside, there was army, not the West Bank, but from Gaza we withdrew completely. Now what happened in 2007? The Hamas took over Gaza by violent means, took over, and since then the Hamas controls Gaza. There were no elections, there are no political parties in Gaza, it's only the Hamas. And the Hamas dictates the people of Gaza what they should do and what they shouldn't. And we withdraw from Gaza, and what did we get in return? We got a terrorist organization, controls this piece of territory, prepares missiles to fire on Israel and fires them, makes these kind of attacks. Then what are we talking? What is the end game?
Yeah, exactly.
And not only this, if you read the charter of the Hamas, it says our aim is to destroy the state of Israel.
What about your relationship with the Palestinian Authority? I know that Fatah seemed more moderate. Is there room to maneuver within the Palestinian Authority, apart from Hamas, that you say has an intention to destroy Israel?
Well, as you have seen, the Hamas was calling for the Palestinians on the West Bank to join, and etc., but we haven't seen this. There were no mass demonstrations in support of what happened. And I think the Palestinian Authority very well understands, and there is a very strong cooperation between the Palestinian Authority and Israel, because we have the same interests. And we need to start talking. We need to start talking and to see how we can settle the issues that we have. But they also the Palestinian Authority needs to have the drive to do it. Because as you know, also the Palestinian Authority, since 2008, there haven't been any elections in the Palestinian Authority. So the question is, whom do they represent? This is also an issue. But again, we are ready for peace. We are ready for talking. We are ready for compromises. But we need to have a partner.
How concerned are you that this could spread more broadly into the region? Our correspondent was telling us that there have been missile attacks coming from Lebanon. There's real concern that Hezbollah, which is situated, I think, in southern Lebanon, might join. It's not official as yet, but how concerned is the Israeli government about that?
Well, we are very concerned about it, and we are following very closely the situation in the north. Obviously, we are prepared for any eventuality. But our duty is to defend our citizens, and that's what we are going to do in the south, in the north, anywhere.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. Such a terribly difficult time. We appreciate you chatting to us. Israel's ambassador to South Africa, Eliav Belotsercovsky. Please note we have reached out to the Palestinian representatives here in South Africa for their perspective as well.